All right, to unpack this further, we are now joined by our resident analyst, Ramathibela-Smith. He is the head of portfolio management at Livera Incorporated. As always, Clive, thank you very much for your time and thanks indeed for joining us. Now, the Africa Economic Conference recently took place in Ethiopia, focusing on knowledge and innovation in Africa. How far do you think that the continent really is in those fields?
I think that we've done relatively well. It's unfortunate that all our talent, what they call in the world of corporate as IP, intellectual property, has always been taken out to the African context. It's been sent all over the world and it's come back to us as a secondary degree of an idea that was actually established here. I mean, I don't have to mention any names, but you know that the IT world, for example, was obviously taken over by Mark Shuttleworth, who went across to the United States, sold the idea, and it came back to us in the format of an internet-based program that was supposed to be utilized. And that shows you that the kind of things that we've got. We've got Elon Musk. Elon Musk, born in Pretoria. I mean, you know, there he goes to the United States and comes back with electric vehicles. I mean, that technology that he applies there is like ages and ages ahead of what we have currently. So you can tell that the bites and the techno world is advanced in Africa, but it's just not been exposed as much, and that's why the guys feel they must go outside the continent for that to be actually realized.
Why is Africa looked down on when it comes to the knowledge and innovation? Is it because that those who have the innovation or the knowledge of sort of go overseas? Is that why Africa is looked down on? Why exactly?
I think that's partly correct. I think you're on the right streak there, Flo. But I think the important thing here to understand is when people want to be exposed, they need to go where the exposure is. You know, there's a biblical term, I'm sure everybody knows about it, that when with the Romans, do what the Romans do. And so it's very difficult then to adapt the Romans' culture here in Africa if it doesn't exist. So you need to go where it's actually all done. And I'm sure everybody will love to know about Silicon Valley, which we all watch now lately. So, I mean, they understand the IT world and the hub where things are actually taking place, and that's where you want to be. That's where the kitchen is, that's where the stove is, and that's where the heat is. And you want to be part of that so that you can expose your brand. The problem is that the market then becomes Africa and not the other way around. So let's see if we can't get somebody who can actually use Africa as a template. Africa is a ride for them to actually take their product outside. We haven't seen that.
Well, maybe on the back of the question I've just asked, then, do you feel that Africa's innovators are being neglected by academics and the private sector, therefore the need for them to leave?
The problem is the trust, you know, the belief in our local brands, in our local manufacturing guys, in our local guys that entrepreneurs that come up with these ideas. And so that's why they sometimes feel that it's not enough to do it here locally. You have to go outside the continent. I mean, it's in every industry. It's scary. I can talk about music, and you know, for music to actually make success, it has to go outside the continent, be recognized by internationals, for it to come back here and be sold to us by video on MTV. It's the same with IT. We developed the banking systems, we developed the systems, we developed the easy access to banking systems here and locally. We have to take it outside to be recognized by the IMF and the WEF for it to be successful, and then it comes back here locally. And so the rating agencies, or the guys that are actually giving recognition to the entrepreneurs, people that are outside the continent, we still believe, and we're still so solemnly believe that the West is the only place for us to make it, and that's the wrong perception.
But then does that not then come back to us? Is it not the fault of Africa, the fact that we only applaud something once people overseas say it's good, and we don't recognize it when it's in our own backyard?
But isn't that scary, Flo? That we have to wait for things to actually be recognized outside the continent for us to actually take seriously? You know, the internet world, the electric car, for example, these things were people that came out of this particular continent and had to go outside for them to be recognized, for us to actually consume it. So the question is it because that we don't recognize talent for what it is, and we have to wait for the Western world to actually recognize it and help us to actually use it appropriately? The scary thing here, that what scares me, is that even in the manufacturing sector, we're starting to see the same pattern of things. For example, we take out raw material here. Instead of it being incorporated and manufactured and developed here, it goes over to China, to India, and to the other Asian markets. for it to be rectified and manufactured, and then it comes back and shipped, and we buy it as jewelry and as accessories. That is quite scary. So we need to create a value chain locally for us to be able to actually sell these things on the African continent and make money out of the rest of the world, and not necessarily out of our own pockets, where we have to pay things double the price instead of actually paying half, so that we can produce more.
Now, the Global Entrepreneurship Week is coming up, and maybe you can go into the importance of innovation for entrepreneurship, and really what tips would you give those up-and-coming innovators?
I want to give the following 3 steps to entrepreneurship being successful in Africa as an alarm for everybody to take care of. The first one is that let's be independent. What we require to be independent is that we don't rely too much on what happens in the rest of the world, but we rely on what we have as a continent to be able to be actually more unique to the rest of the world. And that's important. That's what independence means. It means that you're unique. You are your own type of person and type of business. The second thing we need to do is we need to be able to trust our entrepreneurs. So I'm asking business, I'm begging banks, I'm begging, I'm pleading to them. I'm saying, give these young African minds a platform for them to participate. Give them a voice. Give them articulacy. Give them the things that they need. Give them access to funding that will help them to build these businesses, because we've got some really bright ideas out there, but they're not being recognized because we've been clamped by our own red tapes that we've put as policy. The third and last thing that we need to do is we need to trust African countries as a whole, ourselves, as governments, as business leaders, as entrepreneurs. We need to trust in our own systems, because if they're so good that the world recognizes them and they buy it from us and then bring it back to us to be resold again, that means that we're doing something correct. So stop thinking about what could be the prospect of everybody else. Stop thinking about what's going to go into your pocket. Think about what Africa is doing. Think about the entrepreneurs. Build that. Put money in there. Give them resources so that they can succeed, and we can take this continent to the next level.
All right, I think that's a great point to leave it there. Thank you very much, Clive. As always, a pleasure speaking to you. That's Clive Ramathibela-Smith, our resident analyst.